do you want to come around here? Something? Oh, yes. Hey, well, kia ora, good afternoon, everyone. Can I just say thank you for coming out for our announcement today on Transport for the Future. I think you've probably got enough preamble from our respective remarks, so why don't we go into any questions that you may have.
Mr. Luxon, what assurances can you give that these costings are actually accurate? Because there are a lot of commentators out there saying you are way off.
Well, no disrespect. I won't take any lectures from David Parker or this government on our costings. This is a government that's about to spend $30 billion on an Auckland light rail project that nobody wants. The package of what we've talked about here is much less than that. But what we've done is we've taken the publicly available costings for each of these projects. We've actually taken the upper band of that, and we've also built contingency into it. So we are very comfortable with our costings. This is the most transparent, upfront costings you've ever seen from an opposition party, with a long-term vision of 10 years worth of transformative roading projects, which is fantastic.
Those in the know, though, with transport backgrounds, not just Parker, are obviously critical of this too. They're saying that you are undercooking this.
Well, I'll just say to you, we've taken the publicly available data that's available for each and every one of these projects. We've taken the high end of those estimates, and we've also built contingency on top. So we are very comfortable with what we've got proposed here.
Mr. Luxon, will these roads kill off the provinces? Because we've seen examples of that in the past.
No, this will actually unlock more growth for the provinces in particular. And if you think about something like State Highway 29 from Tauranga to Hamilton, that will create huge amounts of opportunity in residential houses, tens of thousands. It will also create opportunities in commercial property as well, and will actually bring life into new regions and new areas of New Zealand. So, what we're saying here is, look, we want to be able to have a vision to actually link a 4-lane highway from Tauranga to Hamilton to Auckland to Whangarei. And if you just think about the economic powerhouse that creates for regions like Northland, for example, and certainly out here in the Waikato and Tauranga and Auckland as well, that's fantastic.
What could pay for this? Are we talking tolls at any point on any of these roads?
Well, we've got 3 funding streams for this project. There's these $24 billion worth of projects. The first is that we actually are reallocating funding that's already existing. The second thing is that we are going to have a 10-year commitment from the Crown on more capital. And yes, we're going to open up private capital and use innovative funding and financing tools that we see all around the world to be able to fund this infrastructure. New Zealand has a massive infrastructure deficit. And the choices are that we either keep waiting and waiting while things break down on us until the government can afford to do it, or we open up access to new financing tools. And it might well mean, as we see with tolls, as we've seen with value capture, as we've seen with targeted rates, things that we can do in order to get that infrastructure built quicker and also not put that burden on the taxpayer of New Zealand. So we are open up for everything. I just put it to you, these tools and these funding and financing tools are used all around the world today. And you have to remember, there is $11 trillion worth of sovereign wealth funds. There is over $50 trillion worth of private pension funds, and a lot of those funds want to invest in long-term infrastructure with long-term returns. And so that them partnering with the government and also with New Zealand firms is really what we're thinking will be an important part of this too.
Have you already done any work on this? Have you spoken to anyone overseas?
There's a lot of people that have spoken to us over the last 2 years, frankly, about wanting to invest in New Zealand. One of the challenges is that New Zealand is one of the most restrictive, in fact is the most restrictive country in the OECD with respect to foreign direct investment. And so there is capital and money washing around that actually wants to come here and invest in infrastructure projects, and we've actually want to welcome that investment.
Waka Kotahi's been sceptical in the Waikato about getting anything done quick with Cambridge to Paerere Links project. Your time frames that you've got in the plan are sort of quite aggressive. Are you confident that you can really hit the road running that quickly?
Absolutely. I just want to put it to you. John F. Kennedy said, let's go to the moon, and people landed on the moon in 9.5 years. And we have a habit here in New Zealand of spending 25 years talking about things and not actually getting things done. And under successive governments, you have projects that get turned off and on and on and off and off and on, and that's what carries on happening. And what Chris Bishop and I have outlined is a plan to say we're going to have a 30-year pipeline of well-defined projects. We're going to partner with local government, so central and local government are aligned on 10 years worth of sub-regional projects, and we're going to form a national infrastructure agency that has real expertise in funding and financing our investments. We need to step change the way New Zealand does things. We cannot continue to run the country like it's 1975. We need to think about a country we want for 2050 and beyond, and that is going to be one of the leading small advanced economies in the world, and that's our vision of what we're shooting for here.
A big thing locally has been the whole idea of 4-laning Paerere to Tauriko. David Bennett said, we were chatting before, he said, well, that's the long-term vision type of thing. I mean, how realistic really is it, do you think, to get that four-lane?
Well, I'll let Simeon talk to that in particular. Yep.
Well, what we've said is a vision here for four-laning between Tauranga and Whangarei, and we've outlined the first 4 stages that will be getting started over the next 10 years. There, of course, are other stages that need to be done. There's the Kaimais, the Brynderwyns, and those are significant investments that will have to be made in the future. But what we're saying here is just like, 2 decades ago, a commitment was made to Waikato. We are going to open up the Waikato with the Waikato Expressway. We're making a commitment to Northland and a commitment to the Bay of Plenty that we will be driving that, and it will take time, but we will deliver it.
Can you put a time frame on it though? Because as I say, that's been a very popular topic of conversation within the business community here about speeding up access to Tauranga. Can you put a sort of a time frame on when you might be able to invest?
Well, we've outlined today the first 4 stages that we'll be delivering in our first 10 years. There are other stages obviously that need to be scoped and costed and then actually delivered as well. So this is a generational project, but it is ultimately setting a vision to say we need to connect the Upper North Island with a 4-lane expressway to drive economic growth and prosperity and social well-being for New Zealand.
So no time frame, but it's on the radar definitely.
Well, it's the vision. That's what and that's what we're going to deliver.
Mr. Luxon,
Yes.
You mentioned Botany with your public transport announcement. Is that giving preferential? Is that giving a preference towards your electric?
Absolutely not. The reality for East Auckland is that there is up to 160,000 people living in East Auckland. It's one of the most poorly served parts of the country and also of the city. And so there are no public transport options available out in East Auckland whatsoever. And in fact, people who live there use their car 10% higher than anyone else in the country by virtue of that. So actually these projects that have been talked around for the last 25 to almost 50 years in one of the cases, the Eastern Busway and then the Botany to Airport projects are actually long-standing projects that have been around on the agenda for some time. But they will be transformative for the people of East Auckland who actually at the moment have no public transport options whatsoever.
And will you also be ruling out an excise tax?
Well, no, we'll still have an excise tax with respect to what people need to pay for their fuel. That's a normal part of our tax policy in New Zealand over many decades. What we're talking about here is making sure we're not up for keeping the Auckland Regional Fuel Tax. We think that's something that is not fair. It's money that's actually been collected by the council and actually hasn't been spent. Half of it hasn't been spent yet.
What about for EVs? Excise tax for EVs?
Well, we'll have more to say about that. Simeon, do you want to pass anything on that just quickly?
Yes, so what we've said around the excise for EVs, well, obviously they don't take fuel, so they won't pay excise, but we've said they will go on to road user charges. The exemption finishes on the 1st of April next year, and so the plan is for those vehicles to start paying. They'll be at around 2% of the fleet, which was always our policy. Once they hit 2% of the fleet, they should start paying.
What is your opinion, National's opinion on Te Huia train?
Well, look, I think the Te Huia train's been quite a debacle over many years, to be honest. It's costing $100 million, been a very expensive experiment. We're very open to having those kind of regional connections. In fact, we've made a big investment in the Lower North Island rail upgrade as part of our package. But the point here is we've got an expressway. We'll be looking at the review which is being done before making decisions about whether to continue funding that next year.
Do you think that the fact that Waka Kotahi is the funder but also the safety regulator has in any way contributed to the debacle?
Look, no, they've got 2 separate roles that they have to play there, and there's quite a serious incident that took place around the safety. That's obviously been fixed now quite rapidly. I think it was going to take 12 months. It happened within weeks, which was great news. I don't know where the 12 months came from. But obviously NZTA does have a role around regulating, making sure the rail is operating in a safe way, and that is part of their job.
I can tell you why it was fast-tracked. It was because they were requesting a system that only the Auckland Metro trains had.
Yes.
2 weeks later they've said actually no, that one train doesn't need that system, it already has a system. Was it fair that they requested that one train have something that even the Wellington Metro trains don't have?
Well, look, they've got a safety regulation role that they have to play. I mean, ultimately it's their job to do that and do it in a safe way. There's questions that can be asked. In fact, I think the Transport and Infrastructure Select Committee that I sit on is going to be bringing Kiwi Rail and NZTA in to be asking those questions in a few weeks' time, and I'm sure you'll be interested in watching.
Mr. Luxon, sorry, just to go back to the Kaimais, are you able to give us some clarity, please, around a tunnel? Are you shelving ideas for a tunnel? If you're talking 4 lanes, how's it going to work?
What we're very clearly at the moment is we've got a vision which is really focused on our first 4 years, and that means that we're going to do Whangarei to Port Marsden. It also means we'll do Cambridge to Pierere, and then we will continue to look at Warkworth to Wellsford, and then obviously State Highway 29. They are the big 4 projects that we need to do first up in the first 10 years of actually setting that vision of a 4-lane highway.
But does
We
that
then need to
vision
deal.
include a tunnel?
We then need to be able to deal with actually the Bryn-Derwyns and what's an alternative route through there, given some of the instability that we've seen, and about building a resilient path through there, and then ultimately how we deal with the Kaimais. And actually that's, we'd like to deal with that, but we don't have any thinking yet as to how we'll go about doing that. That's on our plan, but it's a long way out. Let's get the 4 projects done that we've got well defined and scoped, and let's actually get something done rather than talking about things forever and ever, and actually get those 4 completed, and then we'll roll on to the next 2 that we have to knock off.
It's not really 4-laning to Tauranga then within that time, really, if you can't talk.
Well, what we're saying is very clearly on the top 10, in the first 10 years, we're very committed to those first 4 projects, and we need those bits to be done right. They're well framed, they're well defined. We'll move on and explore what we need to do around the Bryn-Derwyns and the Kaimais, but we'll work our way through those options. But the first thing is, let's get clear on the short term, the medium term, the long term, all in the context of a vision that actually does a 4-lane highway from Tauranga to Whangarei.
Mr. Luxon, just a question about Labour. What do you
About-
make
sorry?
Labour. What do you make of Labour's party list?
Look, that's an issue for the Labour Party. Yeah, I've got nothing further to add to that. It's really an internal issue for the Labour Party and Chris Hipkins. Yeah. Great. Well, can I say thank you so much? Appreciate your time. Thanks so much, team. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
See ya.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. Right.